Almoayed, who is the founder and chief executive of Tarabut, and Henk van Hulle, who's the chief executive of Open Banking Limited. Welcome. We're here to talk about open banking. So I became aware of, I live in the UK, and I became aware of open banking about maybe 6 or 7 years ago when I noticed that the range of financial services I could access from my phone had suddenly expanded enormously, and kind of getting vetted to rent a new flat was easier, and kind of the things that I could connect my bank to were easier. Setting up a new bank account became an awful lot easier. I'm relatively ignorant of the mechanics behind all that, though. So could we start? Could I ask you, Henk, you've been there since the start of the UK's open banking journey. Could you start by telling me what it is and what it can be used for?
Yes. So perhaps I need to tell you a little bit about the history as well of this and open banking in the UK, because it was actually born in the UK, and it was actually very commendable to regulators and also regulators in the room. It's not often that we commend regulators, but it is because of regulators getting together and sparking innovation and competition on the back of this. So what is it? Well, open banking, it all starts with giving control to the data you own yourself. So you own your own data as a citizen or as a consumer or as a business. It's your data. Others are holding the data for you, but you actually own it. And that's the basic principle where you would start in open banking. Now, if you do not trust to give your data to somebody else, you would not give consent to make sure that they use that data. So the basic principle, and where it all starts, is with consent or permission management. So an end user will give consent to a third party to use data. And the data comes from the data holder, and then often it is the case that most of the data sits with the banks. So 6.5 years ago, we were only an industry which is 6.5 years young, which is phenomenal where we are today already. But 6.5 years ago, there was a remedy in the UK issued by the Competitions and Market Authority.
I think we're having some mic difficulty. Do you have a handheld mic? Or could we have a handheld mic on stage, please?
Sorry for that. Shall I keep it perhaps closer to me?
I think it might be cutting out. We're just getting an alternative now.
There we go.
Sorry. So yes, so the Competitions and Market Authority, they issued a remedy that 9 banks in the UK, the biggest ones in the UK, would have to share the data from current accounts, from personal current accounts and business accounts. And by doing so, that sparked off a lot of innovation in the industry. Fast forward today, we have 94 banks on the platform, and we have 250 fintechs on the platform. 1 out of 5 SMEs are using open banking in the UK. 1 out of 7 consumers are using open banking in the UK. We have 11 million users. We do about 20 million payments as well. So it's not only data exchange, it's also initiation of some form. It could be payments or some other action as well that we are enabling. It is an industry worth 5 billion in the UK. About 4,000 people work in open banking. And it has sparked a lot of new propositions in the industry. Also for public services. So the government itself is a heavy user of open banking.
Thank you very much, Henk. Now similarly, Abdulla, you've been working in open banking since the start in the Middle East. Could you tell me a bit about the framework here and how it's evolved?
Sure. I think before we get started, I'd like to thank the EDB and the Central Bank of Bahrain for organizing this beautiful event. And just like Henk was talking about open banking in the UK, I also want to thank the Central Bank for being the pioneers in open banking to start off with. We launched it, we were amongst the first to launch it in the Middle East, and the pioneering mindset has always been embedded into the ecosystem. But I think when you think about open banking, it's very important to just think about the premise on why it was introduced. And open banking, if you put data aside and data sharing and everything like that aside, it was introduced to increase competitiveness, to deliver better services to customers that don't have access to these services today. And if you think about what open banking has done, it has enabled hundreds of use cases that give financial services access or give customers access to financial services they didn't previously get access to. We see some beautiful use cases here from some of the great companies that talk about microfinance, BNPL, SME finance. All of these things can be enabled using open banking. But even if you think about really what does it allow, and it allows for you to own your own data. But if you, in my opinion, we shouldn't know what open banking is. What we should think about is these new use cases and these new segments that lenders or banks can go after by virtue of these open banking regulations. And that really drives what we do as Tarabut. And the way we look at it is, who are the partners we're trying to help? Who are they trying to serve? And how can we, using our infrastructure, make them grow faster, deliver a better service at a better price, and make them more competitive? And I think this is, in the world where we live today, customers demand services on point, there and then, at a click of a button. And open banking allows for all of that to happen. So that's how we approach it.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly been my experience using it for things like mortgage vetting. You can just click it on your phone and it sort of works now.
And you don't need to know what open banking means.
Yeah.
You can enjoy a new service that you couldn't enjoy previously. And if you look at some of the use cases we've developed over the last, I mean, we're also 6.5 years old now. We started our journey in Bahrain. We've grown throughout the region. But if you look at some of the use cases that we develop, it's people getting access to loans that they couldn't get before because a bank wouldn't lend them. So you talk about the gig economy, for example. There's a massive segment in the market today that deserves to be served, doesn't have a salary certificate, but should be able to get access to finance. Previously, a bank would say, I don't have a salary certificate, I don't get what they need, I don't have what credentials or proof in terms of their income. And we say to them, look, we can now unlock this data that a user can start getting banking services that they didn't use to get previously.
You said you started your journey in Bahrain. Could you talk a little bit about why you chose to start here?
Well, Bahrain's very close to my heart, obviously. It is home. But more so, I think the regulator in Bahrain. I remember starting this journey, there was no such thing as regulations. We learned from Henk and the guys in the UK. And I remember knocking on the door at the central bank and saying, we need something called open banking. And the first answer was, but what is open banking? Let's sit and have a conversation and understand. And there was enough proof and case studies in there of the social impact that open banking can have, of delivering financial inclusion, whether it's for SMEs or people or corporates at the end of the day. And that's what opened the door. And we had entities like the Economic Development Board and the CPP that drove it completely with us. And from there, we grew to the UAE and Saudi Arabia, and now the UK as well.
Yep.
Thanks.
And if you just building on this as well, I think when you look at what happened in the UK 6.5 years ago, we now see 80 countries are developing open banking, 60 are live with open banking, and 80% of the 60 followed the same model as in the UK. So they're localized for 20%, but 80%. And that's very helpful because they have standards which are common with the ones we issued then.
Yeah, Henk, what is it about that model that has clearly been so successful with 60 of these countries adopting it? What's attractive?
I'm often asked, and I don't know if you like food, but what would make something good or a good restaurant? It's the best cook, it's the best recipe, and the best ingredients, I would say, in terms of food. And I think in terms of the best cook, I think coming back to your point as well, Abdulla, in terms of it was really the central bank. It was really a centralized solution. It was not a market force and open somewhere else, but it was driven by regulation. I think that was really, the chef was the regulator. In terms of the recipe, it was a focused recipe on use case, as you say. So we really focused on use cases that make a difference and create benefits for end users. And that meant that we focused, not widely, but we focused also on what we called read and write APIs, so also on actionable data, doing something with it, not just exchanging data. Whereas in a lot of countries, they went very wide, but not deep. And now they're retrenching, and they're trying to find their way back. So it's interesting to see where the countries are in the world in terms of that. And in terms of the ingredients, one is monitoring. Monitoring your ecosystem, very important, because if one bank doesn't deliver fast enough, then it's not going to be a great customer experience. And also it needs to be consistent, a consistent customer experience, so that you experience it through aggregation, for instance, all the same experience across all the banks, for instance. So monitoring is very important. Second is standardization, standardization, standardization. If the fintechs build in Lego and I set my standards in Lego, we can build together in Lego and be very creative and create more innovative solutions for our end users. If it's too fragmented, that is not going to work going forward. I think a third element, a good ingredient, I think, is to work on the ecosystem, a vibrant ecosystem, that it is trusted. Trust is enormously important in our business because we're digitally native here. There is nothing else. You don't have a physical presence. I heard that data is the new oil. Well, actually, I think trust is the new oil. Trusting the data and the source of the data, I think that is much more important, because if there's no trust, people will not give consent to use their data, and then the model falls apart as well. So that's probably, in a nutshell, the recipe for success.
Thank you so much, Henk. You've brought us neatly onto our next topic, because we've established that open banking is great and throws up all of these opportunities. What we're supposed to also be talking about is the challenges and how to overcome them. Abdulla, could you talk about some of these? Could we start maybe with data privacy that Henk already raised around trust? How is this is an evolving area where the law and the regulation is still changing. How is it changing, and how are you thinking about data privacy?
So cybersecurity is a moving goalpost, and it's something that's continuously evolving. And what we've seen across all regulators is it's something that continuously evolves. There are cybersecurity frameworks that are across all markets that are implemented, but there's also a lot of awareness that needs to happen. And that is the role of the banks, that is the role of the regulators, that is the role of the service providers, to say to their customers that, look, there's this new service, there's this new use case where you can connect your account and get a better service, and it is governed by ISO 27000. Companies are certified, they are regulated by so-and-so services. But I think the mindset of people until today, people don't know how valuable their data is. Because if you're willing to share your data with an entity, they will be able to serve you better. I'll give you a very simple example when it comes to retail banking today. If you have 1,000 dinars sitting in your bank account that's been idle for the last 90 days, why is it that until today, I don't wake up in the morning and my bank says to me, hey, Abdullah, by the way, you have 1,000 dinars that you haven't spent over the last 90 days. You're not likely to spend it over the next 60 days. Would you like me to put it in a fixed deposit for you? Right? It's not because the data doesn't exist. They know our spending patterns. The transactional data is all there. It's just a question of leveraging that data to deliver better services to the customers as and when they need them. So once a regulator comes in and says, okay, I'm taking care of all of the cybersecurity requirements, any company that is licensed by us can now help you leverage that data to create more personalized services. And I feel like the mindset of banks and financial institutions and lenders that were previously in a reactive mode, where you need to go to the branch and knock on a door and apply for finance or anything like that, needs to now fundamentally change how they do business by being a lot more proactive, by waking up and getting a push notification that says to you, hey, good morning, by the way, you've got 500 dinars sitting in your bank account, would you like me to put it in a fixed deposit? Or the opposite, which is, watch out, you're overspending based on your income, take it easy on that Thursday night. So that's the kind of mindset where cybersecurity is important, data sovereignty is obviously essential, but that's the role of the regulator to basically ensure that they uphold the highest level of cybersecurity. And it becomes core to our business. But it's really the use cases of how people can leverage their data to do some things that are great.
Like all the best ideas, I hadn't thought of that before you said it, but now you said it, I am thinking, why on earth doesn't my bank tell me that? That would be
And that's
great.
why a lot of these new digital lenders think customer experience is at the heart of it. Right? How do I understand what the customer needs before they need it? Not only by giving them the information, but making it actionable as well.
Thank you very much. Now, another point that we kind of have already touched on, which is a challenge for organizations working in open banking, is kind of, I want to call this either awareness or financial literacy. Basically, are consumers actually cognizant of what they can do through this? Henk, you've been thinking about that
Well,
as well.
one of our main roles, because we are actually a central body and central entity, is also to promote open banking in the industry. But when I say industry, it is a B2B environment. So we don't have the budgets to do like a B2C promotion. And we see that all the fintechs are actually our catalysts. They are actually promoting. The clearer and the better their value propositions are to end users, the better it will be for everyone. And that's what we need to focus on. So our promotion team is mainly focusing on educating the fintech industry in terms of make sure that you don't come with a vague idea or whatever vague position. It has to make a difference, it has to make a benefit, and has benefits to end users. It has to be clear, a value proposition that will drive a lot of volume and scale. Now, in terms of the cybersecurity as well, I think one of our roles as well is it's a little bit like we're actually a software company in the end. It's so we just issued our version 4 of the standards, so the release of that. It's a bit like an iOS 17 or 18, all of a sudden upgrade you have, and we just ensure that we evolve the standards, we ensure that we enhance them with the latest in technology as well and the latest protocols in terms of protection as well for end users.
I think when it comes to awareness nowadays, we live in a time that I'm pretty sure everybody has used ChatGPT until today. It didn't come with a user manual. You just type whatever you need and you use it and you enjoy it and you're like, wow, this is absolutely amazing. In the case of Bahrain, I'll give you an example. My mother uses Benefit Pay on a daily basis. She never got a user manual on how to basically transfer payments. It's a given, right? And when you look at the other side of it and you look at the banking, you need to think of the value that the product delivers as opposed to the education that comes with it. Users are smart today, and they know how to use these products. It's just about delivering that value, making sure that it can do something that is absolutely necessary.
Thanks very much. Are you the kind of flip side of kind of awareness slash resistance from end users is resistance from incumbent banks? How are you seeing that and kind of overcoming it? You can see why they might be resistant, I suppose.
I think the banks that are, I would understand if there were banks that were resistant to it 6 years ago. Today, the market has completely changed. And we've reached a point where it's very easy for a bank to leverage open banking to deliver new use cases. And that's where, these are the banks, in my opinion, that would win. I don't think that banks are they continue to push back the same way that they used to back in the day, because it's very clear that the banks that leverage open banking have been able to get a competitive edge and really deliver something that's exceptional.
I know banks who told me that they have 42 internal use cases of open banking, because it makes them better understand their own customers. A lot of banks have like a portfolio of 7, 9 brands, and they want to bring that also under one view of the customer. Better suitability, better affordability, better lending, lower risk, etc. So just internal use cases alone. So that it's quite powerful to see how open banking just within one bank can be already very effective.
I'm of the opinion that the most valuable data today is banking data. Because when you look at people's browsing history, we call it aspirational data. They look at houses they can't afford, trips they don't necessarily can afford going to today. There's a lot of aspirational browsing that happens online. But your banking data is literally who you are, where you have your coffee, how much you spend, what times you go out, what time you go out for breakfast, where do you spend your Thursdays. Banks sit on an enormous behavioral analysis that can be leveraged to really deliver great experiences. And I feel like if that is really utilized, then the banks have the most to gain in reinventing how they value, how they score, how they look at a customer, and how they score a customer in terms of their worthiness to lend or how they earn as well.
Economists view that sort of data set as an absolute gold mine because it is people's real preferences as opposed to their reported preferences.
But then, yet again, if everybody believes that, how often, again, I go back to my earlier example, is how often did anyone here in the room wake up in the morning with a notification that says to you, forget about the transactional notification of what you did last night and how you spent your credit card, but when was the last time you woke up with a technology saying to you, hey, by the way, you've got X amount of dinars sitting in your bank account, not doing anything, let me put it in a fixed deposit for you. Yes. The data's there. Why aren't we leveraging it? And that's the gap that open banking can unlock.
I hope people will be ringing up their banks to complain about the lack of services like this in the future. Could we talk, like all of finance and all of tech, ultimately developing a good open banking network depends on sourcing talent and kind of developing it, retaining it, making sure that you've got the people who can build this. Could we maybe, starting with Henk, because I guess the UK's journey is slightly older, could you talk a little bit about the kind of the talent in the ecosystem, how you attract it, what you need in terms of human capital to build this stuff?
Well, we of course need very agile people because this is a very swift market nowadays. It grows quickly. We need them to be very flexible. But the talents we are trying to find in particular is stakeholder management for my. So it's not only technical, we can go the whole technical in terms of wallets, tokenization, DLT, decentralized solutions. So that definitely we need to have in-house too. But to make this work is to make an ecosystem kind of dance together at the same pace and move forward. It's like a chief stakeholder officer in your management team you need. But all your people need to be like that. We are also very, this is this is like shaping still. It's talent with us is we need shapers and implementers at the same time. That's two rare qualities together. People who can shape and implement at the same time, and nevertheless, ensure that there are a lot of stakeholders together. So to give you an example, I'm working on open banking payments and VRP in the world, so recurring payments. And I have in that group 3 regulators and the government. I have 20 funders, banks and fintechs. I have 6 trade associations. And I have of course, the payment processors as well in that group, and representatives from the small businesses and consumers as well in one group. So now to move that forward is not easy. So stakeholder management skills are, for me, top of list.
Thank you. Abdulla, how do you see human capital? Where are you sourcing it from? And is it also stakeholder management that's your...
No, so the region has changed a lot. I mean, if I go back and remember our first days, when I started Tarabut, there was no such thing as Fintech in Bahrain. We were the first entrance to what was considered a regulatory sandbox. I couldn't hire a single engineer, right? There was just a few of us whiteboarding, looking at what can we do. We got the license, and we couldn't hire anyone. There was just no talent. Today, we grew from Bahrain, we went to the UAE, we set up in Saudi Arabia and in the UK as well. Today, we're close to 200 people spread across. And I'll tell you, the market has completely changed. I used to go to the UK and we set up our offshore entity in the UK because we tried to hire talent and engineers out of there. Today, a majority of these engineers are actually asking to move to the region here. The region has become a lot more attractive for both from a lifestyle perspective, but also from an innovative perspective. The second thing that I want to just highlight is if you look at the growth, I mean, we never had a FinTech Forward, right? We never had events of like-minded people that wanted to come and collaborate. The ecosystem is blowing up. There's a lot of talented and great Bahrainis that are out there, a lot of people in the GCC, but also just the sheer number of FinTechs. You've got about 450 FinTechs in the UAE right now, many, many FinTechs here in Bahrain. You've got about 200 FinTechs in Saudi Arabia. And the strategy is very simple. I think we see it across the governments of, we saw the Minister of Finance here and talking about the importance of FinTech for Bahrain. And we see the same thing in the UAE and Saudi Arabia and the wider region. So starting a FinTech today, I would highly encourage anyone because there is a lot of talent. Now, as far as what we do, we use all our hubs across the region to both give people an opportunity to grow, but also bring in people that are young and aspirational and want to learn. Nothing would make me prouder, obviously, than hiring people that are locals, that are new to the space and train them and get them into the ecosystem. And I also have had the privilege of an experience of having people that didn't work in startups previously that came to Tarabut, worked with us, and then spun off and started their own fintechs themselves as well. And nothing makes the ecosystem, I think, more beautiful than seeing people that got into a sector, fell in love with it, started developing their own ideas, and actually went out and raised their own capital.
What do you think is coming next for the, for the sector in Bahrain and also for global banking in general?
I think customers demand a better service when it comes to financial services. I think customers get personalized services today. I use this example a lot, but you log into your Amazon account and the first thing that pops up is the kind of chocolates you like to eat or the kind of books you like to read. Shopping has become so intuitive, yet banking services, if we all walked into a bank today, we'd probably all get the same credit card, right? Why is it not personalized? And I think what's next is a lot more intuitive and personalized financial services.
Henk, what do you think is coming next? What's open banking's next phase?
Well, I think it's to the control point here. So in the end, you're in control. You decide when, what is paid, in which currency, what regular basis or not. I think CVRP, so is one of the commercial VRP, is what definitely coming in the UK. I think we should have focused much earlier on identity, and I know you are doing that here. I think if you can learn from us, or not learn from us, is go and start straight away with that as well, together, combined. So payments and identity, and then banking information is an amazing pool to work in. And then further developments, I think we're looking now at beyond open banking. And we are going to, we're going to skip even open finance, we're going to call it open data. In the UK, we call it smart data, and we will build a regulatory framework for all smart data schemes, so exchange. So in the King's speech, open banking was mentioned as the first smart data scheme in the UK. Now, we are going to build on that bedrock, and we're going to expand it to all other frameworks for data exchange, which is going to, of course, unlock a lot of value. So energy, for instance, if you know how we can switch to a better energy provider, for instance. We could also look at your mortgage, but not only your mortgage, revolutionize the home buying process. In the UK, it takes 3 to 4 months to buy a home. Why not in 2 weeks? You know, and that can, through standardization of APIs and data sets, that can happen. And that's create a completely new ecosystem as well. So I think I'm very optimistic about the future of smart data exchange.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid that's about all we have time for, but what an optimistic note to end on. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing your thoughts.
Pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you. I think they'll want to vote.